Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax, and let's chat about the energy from the astrology and human design of the day today. Well, today is a much more active day, we could say, than it was yesterday, at least for the first part of yesterday, while the moon was in Scorpio and void of course, which means that it slowed us down and made it so that we would have to sort of wait in order to get some things done. And today, that is not the case. The moon is in Sagittarius today. That gives us some access to adventure, to optimism, to production. But there's a couple of little warnings about today in terms of making big decisions or going off into new directions that you will definitely want to know about. So, I hope everybody had a wonderful day yesterday. I know I was able to just sort of clean up some things that I needed to get done, sort of in the background of my life. And it was a great, time until about 1:20 in the afternoon, which is when the moon moved out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius, thus breaking the void of course moon spell, if you will. And it seemed like then things picked up and I was able to get things done. And not that I wasn't getting things done before that, it was that I was playing cleanup, right? I was getting, details finished, cleaning up things that I was in the middle of or had been in the middle of and finishing those things up. So it wasn't really a bad day at all. And today will be a day to maybe get some more things done. There's certainly more energy available through the moon today on an emotional level. And so let's break it down a little bit and talk about what today will bring. Let's see, who do we have? Good morning, Colleen, and good morning, Michelle. Good to see you ladies this morning. So the moon in Sagittarius today is conjunct the planet, the dwarf planet, Ceres. And Ceres is the goddess of, she's sort of the mother goddess, where I think of the moon as representing the mother, maiden, and crone, sort of all the phases of the feminine, the life phases of the feminine, let's say. Ceres represents the mother part of that phase. She is the great mother. And when the moon is conjunct Ceres, then it's kind of an important day. There's some important things to learn about yourself or to learn about the way that you nurture that come to the surface during this kind of time. The moon is also squaring Neptune today and squaring the sun. So while it's a good day, there's going to be some things in the background here that might be a little bit disconcerting for some people, because remember, the moon in a square to the sun is the last quarter moon, and it is a time when we are reevaluating from within the path that we laid out in front of us with the intention setting of the new moon. We call this point the crisis of consciousness. It is the inner dynamics that may be blocking your path forward. So here we have to really go on the inner planes and evaluate what is working for us and what isn't. What doesn't work in the world, when we try to do something and it doesn't work, that's what we need to pay attention to. And paying attention, on the other hand, to what does work. Because we've all had successes and we've all had failures in different kinds of ways. And we know then on that experiential level what it is that works and what it is that doesn't work. So why is it then that we often, and this is what we might find today, why is it that we are often beating our heads up against that proverbial wall and trying to do things that we know don't work? Right? That's like the very definition of insanity. So we have that kind of coming up for us today. So when you set your intentions for the powerful new moon last month or this month, what was built into that? Right? Was there something built into that is taking you backwards and not forwards? Was there something built into that was you trying to do something different, but really going about it in the same way, right? These are the things that we are evaluating today with the moon coming into a square with the sun. These are the two luminaries. The moon and the sun are the most important characteristics of who we are as human beings, as spirits embodying or being embodied in, this body that we have. So, what we may be pointing ourselves toward today is the inner shift that we have to make in order to move forward. I know this morning I had a moment. Actually, I've had several moments like this over the last few days of I don't know how else to explain it except fear. And it wasn't so much, mortal terror or that kind of fear where we think of shaking and, that kind of thing. It wasn't like that. It was more like this subtle feeling of, I don't even know how to quite qualify it. Maybe not being good enough, um, worried about not being successful in the things that I've set out for myself to accomplish. And then if that fails, what does that mean? And so a lot of things kind of just below the surface, but within me that you could likely do this in your own self, trace back to old energy, right? Old patterns within you, in your subconscious mind, and maybe even fears or limiting thoughts about what you can do or about who you are. Right. And then that leads to that inner chatter, that mind that keeps telling you, well, maybe I'll just put this off for another week. Maybe I won't do this at all. Maybe this isn't the right thing for me. Maybe I'm trying to reach too far. You know what I'm talking about, right? The chatter that begins in your mind. And that is what we're dealing with today with the moon in the square to the sun. What is it that's cropping up in your inner dynamic that could put the stop on what it is that you intended, what it is that you're trying to create as we move forward here, right? That's the big deal. Now, the moon is also in a square to Neptune today in Pisces, right? Moon or sun and Neptune both in Pisces. The moon in Sagittarius, and that forms a 90-degree angle. Those signs are at a 90-degree angle to one another, which is called a square, which is a challenge. Right? It's like laying down the gauntlet and saying, okay, are you going to rise to the challenge or are you going to cower back down and slink away into the night again? So we have this, kind of gauntlet lying in front of us. And what are we going to do about it? Now, with Neptune involved, Neptune is a planet that makes things foggy. It makes things hard to discern. It makes it unclear. And if you have already gotten into mind chatter, then the moon squaring Neptune makes it almost impossible for you to really hear what your inner intuition is telling you or what your inner self is telling you. So if your inner self, your inner mind, or your intuitive self is telling you that the weather is clear and the weather is fine and keep going, it may be drowned out by the very loud thoughts of fear or low self-worth, etc., that whatever those old patterns are that may be coming up for you. So consequently, today is not a day to make big decisions or to set off in a new direction in any kind of big way. If you already have projects underway, then there's no problem here. But if you've decided today's the day to start something, that may not be so good for you, right? Because there's a couple of things lined up. First of all, we've got this square going on with the moon and the sun. We have the square with the moon and Neptune, and we're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. So we're already slowing down. So it's urging us to be more contemplative before we move forward, to be more deliberate before we move forward. And that might mean if your mind isn't clear today, if there's too much chatter going on internally, then this is not the day to make a big decision or to move forward. Right? It might be a good day to, take a look back at the plan, rework the plan, but there's just something about the square to Neptune that says leave big decisions for now, right? Don't try to force yourself into doing that. Wait to start any new projects or programs until the appropriate new moon or the energy that is in support of what you're doing. Unfortunately, the next new moon is going to be in tandem with Mercury turning retrograde. So if you have projects that are already in the works, you're fine. But starting something wholly new may not be a good plan until after the end of March. We'll talk more about that, though, and especially in the webinar tomorrow. Today's Tuesday, so tomorrow is Wednesday. You still have time to register for the March What's Up in the Stars webinar. And that happens at 4:15 p.m. tomorrow afternoon for the West Coast, 7:15 p.m. for the East Coast. I posted the link again yesterday on my Living Astrology page. Just follow the link and it will take you to the registration page. This webinar is $20 and we will go through the entire month of March. Have your personal chart with you. That might be very helpful. And also your human design chart, because we also are going to dive into the themes that are going to develop around the human design for the month of March. So let's see who else has checked in since. Oh, wow. Lots of you. Good morning, Asa. Good morning, Mimi. Good morning, Debbie Hedden. Good morning, Patricia. Good morning, Natasha. She says, yesterday was a gift, yet very balanced with moods. One side calm to the other side tears and other emotions. That's not unexpected, I suppose. Debbie Hedden says, OMG, this is so my life right now. And no decisions being made, trying to stay sane. Definitely, sanity, such an interesting word, right? We can, I think when I hear the word insanity, I mean, I'm literally thinking of those people that are, in straitjackets in a facility or an institution, or who are really mentally ill. But when I think about literally what we talk about in terms of insanity, the idea that we continually try to do things the same way, but expect new results, and that being a definition of insanity, how many times and places in our lives do we do that, right? And how many times when we are ready, we are getting ready to step into something new, to step into a new level of ourselves, does the tendency of that insanity show up in your life? That, I think, is what I'm feeling right now, as I'm ready to step up to this next level, and it is literally scaring the bejeebs out of me. As in, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm afraid it's going to be a total flop and failure. And what does that mean about me? And then does that mean I have to crumble up and go backwards again? So many things, right? Those voices in your head that tell you so many different things. Yet I know that what I've been doing isn't working. So to continue doing that would be insane. So I have to try something new, right? Maybe not today, but there is something new in the works, but it's scary. And therein is that sun square the moon. There's that feeling that there's some kind of shift. There's some inner blockage, perhaps, to the ability to move forward fearlessly. And the only way to push through fear, if you've listened to me long enough, you've heard me talk about the spleen in the human design. Let me show you where the spleen is in a human design chart. Here's the spleen right over here. And the spleen, every one of these gates here can double as a gate of fear, false evidence appearing real, and are what we consider paralysis points. So when you have those, you have some of those defined by your natural birth chart. There are places where you could literally become paralyzed and not be able to move forward. Or they could be points where you can use that energy, feel it, and push through it. And finally, for once in your life, let fear go. How fun is that, right? So the spleen is a center in your human design chart that really represents the survival energies. Now, we've needed the survival energies at some point in our evolution, right? We needed to know what could eat us, what we shouldn't eat, when to put away, food, when to know the seasons. And by watching our environment, we tuned in to what was the things that we would need to survive. The fight, flight, or freeze instincts developed within us. They're highly had been highly tuned within us. But as we get more and more modernized, those kinds of fears of survival have morphed, and they morphed into more of those false evidence appearing real. The fear that the past is going to repeat itself, or a fear of the future, or that you're inadequate, or that you're not perfect, or that things will never be perfect, and on, right? Or you're going to fail. right? There's that other one. That's a big one, that you're going to fail. Another one, you're going to fail in your responsibility to your family. If you follow your heart into whatever it is that you want to do, that you love to do, that somehow that's going to equate to failing in your responsibilities to your family, your tribe, or your community. So we have all of these little things that can get in our way, that get triggered. If you look right now, the spleen is completely open. There isn't anything there. Right now in your natal chart, you may have some, things here that you're contending with. If you know them, then you know where your weak spots are going to be. For example, if you have the gate 44 or the gate 50, that you may have to push through things that have to do with the past repeating itself, or with that failure to in your responsibilities to your family or tribe. And once you push through, it evaporates. It tends to just disappear. But you got to be willing to push through. That's the key, right? You have to push through. So anyway, the best thing for us to do then with this energy that we're experiencing right now is to leave the big decisions behind, or wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a much better day for that. But on the other hand, be willing to listen to what it is that's going on. What is that dialogue telling you inside of you? What is it telling you about you, right? All right. Debbie, would love to do webinar, but the time doesn't work for me. It doesn't matter if you can't attend live. The webinar is recorded, and you can still have access to that anytime after the broadcast is over. So you won't miss out on anything except the live broadcast. So, all right. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more today, a bit about Ceres, capital Ceres. She is the mother goddess in your astrology chart. Let's see here. If I can highlight this, I'll circle it. Actually, that is not a circle. That is a square. It's hip to be square. All right, let's look at this. So here you see it looks like a question mark with a line across it instead of a dot at the bottom. That is the goddess, or the dwarf planet Ceres, and she is conjunct the moon, right? Now they're both at 9 degrees. So today is a day where Ceres is up front and center, right? So there's some kind of message the moon is delivering, maybe, or some kind of feeling or emotion being evoked while the moon passes over Ceres. So let's take a look at what is Ceres. What does she represent in your chart? And what does Ceres in Sagittarius mean? Because that's where she is, right? The moon is in Sagittarius conjunct Ceres. So Ceres represents the inner mother, the part of you that is what you need in order to feel supported and loved and nurtured, what you need to feel nourished. So whatever sign that Ceres is in your natal chart shows you the way it is that you feel supported in the world. So for example, if it's in the sign of Taurus, you feel supported when there's touch involved, when you have food and things that are stabilizing to you, when you have a home and a foundation. If you are Ceres in Gemini, when you're able to use your mind and follow your curiosity and learn new things. So Ceres she plays a little bit differently in every sign. Ceres also represents our food supply and our connection to the earth. She is our inner earth mother, if you will. And it is then also visible to us how we take care of the earth, how we take care of ourselves on the earth. Do we prefer organic whole foods, or are we more of the junk food person? And there isn't any judgment on which one is right or wrong. That's not my point here. It's that there are different signs are going to have different things, right, about this. But the food supply is hugely important because in the mythology of Ceres, you remember, she is the one whose daughter Persephone was stolen by Hades or Pluto and taken into the underworld. And Ceres, being the earth mother, was in mourning. And so the earth dried up and the crops failed and everything was dark and cold. And the gods above, Zeus and the, bigger, the pantheon of sky gods, came down to hell or into the underworld and made a deal with Hades to allow Persephone, or she has another name too. Persephone, or starts with a D. Anyway, Persephone, to live 6 months of the year above ground and the other 6 months of the year down in the underworld. So there we get the idea of we have 6 months of the sun and of the earth being fertile, and so the idea of spring and summer, and then the fall and winter where things are dying off and going into hibernation. And so it represents those natural cycles within us as well. So where are we nourished, and where is it that we dry up at times and need to kind of go into our cocoon and reemerge later? So there's often environmental concerns. It's the one planet that I think we could really look to in terms of the environmental movement and how it is that we take care of, or rather don't take care of, our resources here on the planet. And because Ceres has been relegated to dwarf planet status, and a lot of astrologers don't even look at her, or are just, waking up to the reality that she's playing in our charts, is it any wonder then that the Earth has not been our number one concern, right? Our home, our planet hasn't been uppermost in our minds when it comes to how we decide what we're going to do with our land, with our waters, with our sky, with our trees, with our anything, right? So, and she's relatively new in the grand scheme of things. I want to say it was 2005 when she was discovered, and it might have been a little bit earlier than that. She may have been 2003, but then in 2006, when the International Astronomical Union got together, they reclassified planets and created a stink where Pluto, if you were going to declassify Pluto from planet to dwarf planet, Ceres is actually bigger than Pluto. And we had been considering her as an asteroid or just a trans-Neptunian object. So she needed to be elevated to dwarf planet status. So she was elevated at the same time that Pluto was demoted. And so we have an interesting sort of story in the background of these two planets as well. So in the sign of Sagittarius, the mothering or the nurturing takes on is about sharing adventure and knowledge and being free to do what you want and when you want to do it and to go where you want to go. It is literally the nurturing that comes when you broaden your horizons, right? When you look beyond your own borders without walls, when you look beyond your borders at a global economy and how we are all interdependent upon one another on this planet, that no man is an island, no woman is an island, no one country is an island, and that we are all kind of cast together in this planet and we have to learn how to stop being so nationalized in our expression of who we are. We're humans first. We are earthlings, not necessarily Americans or Japanese or Europeans, right? Those are just the places that we're from and maybe the designation of the places we live. But on a bigger scale, we have to envelop a bigger us, a more inclusive us, and that means we probably need to start looking at ourselves as earthlings, right? Or humans, not just those smaller designations. So here we have then the moon connecting with a planet today that also in the same sign, Sagittarius, is breeding more optimism and adding to Jupiter, who's also in Sagittarius, and the natural optimism that that planet brings to us. So again, a little bit of that warning, like I gave you earlier or at the end of December, when we did the webinar for 2019, that was said, okay, we are going to feel very optimistic. We're going to want to grow and expand. And if we do that too far, too fast, too much, then we are going to pay the price later on in the year when Jupiter then and Saturn, Pluto, and Mercury and Venus all line up in Capricorn, and we get slapped into conservatism. So I gave you that little bit of a warning, right? If you can embrace conservatism, not a political statement, but conservatism, stewardship, good stewardship, resourcefulness. Now, then it will inform your decisions about how fast and how far you grow. And then you will find as we move into 2020 that you won't be starting from that negative position, right? Or feeling like, oh man, I grew too far too fast and now I'm going to pay the price, right? So she's feeding into the optimism, and we have every right to be optimistic, right? There is something to be said about being optimistic. It's just don't let your optimism cloud your realism, right? Saturn in Capricorn, realism, Jupiter in Sagittarius, optimism. But what's the next sign Jupiter goes to? Capricorn, realism, and the reality that might bite you in December when Jupiter makes that move is that you grew too far too fast. So that's why I keep saying be proportionate in everything you do, right? Everything, the money you spend, the time you spend, the energy you expend, how much you buy, how much you sell, how much you say you can do, how much you commit to, right? Overcommitting can be just as negative as overspending. So lots of big things here. Let's see what people are saying. Good morning, Vanita. It's good to see you. We missed you yesterday. At least I didn't see you out there yesterday. I think I've seen and said hello to everybody. Unless you have questions, I'm literally done with today. It's one of the shorter days for me in terms of what to share, as there weren't a lot of big things happening today. I do believe tomorrow is a different day. And tomorrow, don't forget, is the webinar. If you are so inclined, you can schedule yourself in by just registering. And the recording, if those of you who are concerned that you can't be there for that at that time, you still will get the recording to be able to listen to later. And of course, you always have the option, if questions arise for you and you're listening to the recording instead of the live broadcast, you can always reach out and ask your questions either here in the morning or via email. All right. Mimi says to be grounded in our optimism. Great way to say that. To be grounded in our optimism, right? If it seems like it's too much, it likely is. If it seems like it's over the top, chances are it is. And you might have to pay the price later for even entertaining that idea. Let me see if I've gotten to everything I wanted to say. I don't think there was anything new happening in human design today, being the 26th. Actually, there, is, but I don't want to bring that up today. It's a whole new subject. We'll bring that up tomorrow. All right. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, I'm done. So I will see you all tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow, I am also on Angel Heart Radio. What a day tomorrow is going to be. Woo. I'm on Angel Heart Radio tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And that will be 6 p.m. East Coast time, just before the webinar. And that's why I changed the time on the webinar to about 4:15 my time, because I thought, what if I get into the middle of a reading with someone at the end of the broadcast and then I don't get over at 4 p.m. on top of the hour to get to the webinar starting. So that's why I moved it to 4:15, just to give me a little bit of leeway. So Angel Heart Radio is a show that is on Blog Talk Radio. I'll post that link here for you today as well. You are free to listen in. Tomorrow we are taking up Mercury retrograde in Pisces. And what does that mean for all of us? And then we'll start the webinar at just a little past 4:15 that is. In the meantime, you guys have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye for now.